So let's move off the topic of video games just for a moment, because I did want to talk to you. We did have a little bit of a discussion about net neutrality, and you definitely have opinions and thoughts on this. And I do not, because I am ultimate fence sitter. That is what I do, because I don't feel like I'm educated or smart enough to hold on to an opinion for very long. I do, you know, I sort of lean towards the internet being a utility, because I think it should be. I think that makes sense. But at the same time, I also hear other arguments, and what I'm going to do for this little segment of the show is I found an article from Bustle that gives 10 pros and cons of each argument of net neutrality. Okay. So do you think we should just explain what net neutrality is, just in case no one really knows what the hell is going on?
Well, I would worry maybe about some fence sitters out there that think that it's too complicated to wrap their, that worry, okay, if I start diving into this, I'm going to have to like really get a grip on some concepts like the FCC and this Title II stuff and this, and that is kind of an obstacle to understanding. But I think a short version of it is, net neutrality is what you said it was, that the internet should be open and free because it is a utility. I think that the cable companies push that the internet is just like their cable packages. It's a product that you go and buy and you choose this or this. But the internet has in 2017 taken such a huge role in our economy and in our our communications and stuff that it's at this point it's up there with stuff we can't live without, such as electricity, which is what my background is. I'm actually going to school for electrical, not mechanical engineering. I didn't want to bust your bubble or anything there, Shane. I don't come on to people's show and correct them, okay? But electrical engineering is my background, and so that's why I have intimate knowledge of what a market looks like when people believe that this is something that is a basic human right, or this is something you get just by being a citizen of a country. You get road access, you get postal service, and right now we don't have internet on that list. Internet is like, you get some money together and you pay for it.
Yeah, and so this is what the argument is about. So let's go ahead. Let's just roll into the pros and cons, and I'm going to label a pro, and we'll talk about that, and I'll label a con and see what your thoughts are on that. Is that cool?
Okay. Yeah, hit me.
So, pro, net neutrality encourages innovation. Supporters of net neutrality argue that big companies like Netflix could pay internet companies for special advantages, such as faster speeds and more bandwidth. If a new video streaming startup wanted to enter the market, for instance, they would have no chance to compete. Would you agree with that?
Okay, no, that's that's kind of a misrepresentation of kind of what happened with Netflix. Netflix in particular, and this is after, close to 50 years of the FCC supporting net neutrality. The FCC kind of left Netflix in a lurch in 2012, and Netflix, instead of going through a lengthy litigation process, with Comcast, which Comcast was saying, there's too much bandwidth being taken up by Netflix. Oh, and also we're not saying this, but Netflix is a direct competitor to the cable service that we also provide. And so Netflix was like, I have enough money to make this problem go away. I'm just going to pay you a fee. Netflix is the only streaming service that pays a fee, and they're the only streaming service that is required to pay a fee. So
I did not know that.
To worry that, okay, maybe there's another Netflix that comes along, like I think that situation might look different. But this is what will always happen when there's an economic principle that you don't want the same company owning both the Mississippi River and the boats that are on it. Because if you do, some other competing boats will come along and you'll say, you can't use my river if you're going to compete with my boats. And that's the reason, that principle is the reason that the government owns the roads that we drive on. Because if Ford Motor Company owned the roads that we drive on, they would charge for Chevy riders to ride on it, right?
Yeah,
if the government owns the postal service. If Amazon owned the postal service, they would charge money for Alibaba customers. So we say, this is a public good. We're all going to share. Okay, the government's going to be in charge of it, and we're not going to worry. the way the telecoms are set up, the same company both delivers the internet to you and also delivers content such as cable, which is why they throttled Netflix, such as phone, which is why they cut off VoIP. That internet phone, people were like, hey, the internet's pretty cool. I can actually make calls with it. And Verizon and Comcast were like, the hell you can. That's what we do, right? We're the call making people. And each time that these things went down, the FCC would fine them because it was like, net neutrality. That was a position that they didn't just support. They actively pursued it and was like, it's only been... I tried really hard to find a single FCC chair that didn't support net neutrality. And the one that we have now is the only one that's been anti-net neutrality.
Right. Okay. That's okay. And then I'm going to read the con.
Oh, yeah. You did ask me a question.
Here's the con. Net neutrality supposedly stifles innovation. Gone are the days of waiting 10 minutes on your dial-up phone for a GeoCities page to load. Remember that? God. But Pi argues that strict regulations maintain the status quo and stifle competition among websites. Rolling back net neutrality regulations could give companies the flexibility to experiment with new business models that weren't allowed in the past. On top of that, internet providers could still help out online startup companies by exempting them from data caps, for example. What do you say to that?
The new business models that he has in mind are where you have to pay extra to get your internet unthrottled. So I don't really support that.
Yeah, it's a little weird, right?
I wonder, if when you say like, we're going to do this a good thing because someday maybe these cable companies that have never once given us a reason to trust them to do something good or to do something pro-competition, these cable companies maybe will offer, this discount of no data caps for a small business. They could maybe do that someday. Cool. I mean, I hope they do, but I am fairly certain that, they'll probably do something much more horrific.
Yeah. With you on that one. Okay, pro. All internet data should be equal. Rule limits quote, all internet data should be equal, unquote. Rule limits the power of corporate greed.
Yes, I 100% agree with that. And Pi will use the word libertarianism is very popular now, and so people are very anti-regulation. They think regulation is a curse word. The government destroys everything it touches. So when he's selling this, he's saying we're rolling back regulation. We're just taking regulation away. But like the reason that they haven't, the FCC is a regulatory body that has kept them from doing this up until now. Like, it's so bizarre. And I don't think enough people are talking about how bizarre it is. Like the raison d'etre for the FCC, the reason they exist is to keep the cable companies in line. So to hear them agree with everything the cable companies say is like if somebody worked for Big Tobacco and then became the Surgeon General and is like, oh, smoking doesn't cause cancer. What? No, of course not. We're not going to enforce that anymore. See ya. That's what's going on.
Yeah. Okay, con. But in reality, all internet data isn't equal. Okay, but consider that services like BitTorrent allow users to download exabytes of software, movies, and music illegally while straining the network built and maintained by telecommunications service providers. Tech companies have created services that let people make calls and send gifts for free, so why shouldn't internet providers be compensated?
No, I'm going to put a stop to that one right here and right now, once and for all, okay? This is my ace, Shane. This is my skip to this point in the thing when you show somebody this, all right? Because this whole time, cable companies always whine about how unfair it is that the little old lady that checks her email once a week has to pay the same amount as the little 16-year-old that uses BitTorrent to stream Game of Thrones, 24/7, 30 terabytes worth of all this stuff that he's streaming. They have always whined about that. There is a very simple solution to that, and it's a pricing model that I actually support Okay.
Yeah.
The same way with electricity, you know how every month you get your electricity bill and you pay for the wattage that you used. They take how much you used on the meter, they multiply it by a number, and that's your bill.
Yeah.
They don't do that for cable. And the reason they don't do that is because they're making more money charging a flat rate, which means that's proof positive that more people are paying too much for internet than paying not enough. In other words, there's way more little old ladies than 16-year-olds that are using that torrenting service. Isn't Google,
sorry to interrupt, but isn't Google Fiber, I can't remember because we don't have it out here, but I think if I remember reading the website correctly, Google Fiber do they have a tiered system, or is it you pay for what you get, or you pay for what you use?
I don't know, but I do know that everywhere Google Fiber has come in, Comcast and AT&T have gone around door to door the next day and been like, hey, our service is suddenly $40 cheaper.
Yeah.
What an amazing coincidence that we discovered a new way.
I honestly think that's the only way, though, if you really think about it, it's the only way that like Comcast is going to, competition is good for the consumer. And right now, Comcast is just a monopoly on all things internet and cable. So Google, I think, has a fighting chance because they have billions and billions of dollars. They can really take the fight to Comcast. And they got to do it, man. They got to be. I have problems with Google. I think everyone has problems with Google. But in this particular instance, I want them to beat them senseless. They're like the underdog in all of this. They need to come in and they need to put that fiber in and say, "Fuck you, Comcast. We're gonna, this is enough of your shit. You're done. You're done here. We are the internet. You are old news."
We do, and we have a lot of high hopes for Google. But if you imagine for just a second, if everybody thought the way you did about how the internet was a utility, right?
Yeah.
Like how ridiculous this conversation would be if we're talking about like something that we take for granted, like roads. Like if we thought of the internet the way we thought of roads.
Yeah.
And it's shit like we don't think about it, right? We just use it to get from here to there.
Right.
And we wouldn't walk outside and there's two people there and one's like, hey, I'll let you use my road for this much money. And one's like, I'm a competitor. I'll let you use my road for this much money. We would just be like, get out of my way because we're getting from here to there. And that's why that I think it all begins with that perception of like the internet is not a thing that you should have to go to Comcast or AT&T or even Google for.
Right. On to the next pro.
Let's hear it.
Net neutrality prohibits internet providers from censoring content. Net neutrality guarantees, to a certain extent, freedom of expression and choice in what content we consume. Under current regulations, well, now, not so much, but this article was written like 2 months ago. But under current regulations, internet providers cannot censor content or use their network to promote one website over another. In other words, Time Warner, for example, can't give more bandwidth to news sites that support their corporate interests while limiting the bandwidth for others. That's, you agree with that?
Yes, that sounds awesome. Let's keep it.
Yeah. Con. Tech companies already choose what we can and can't see. Some might point out that while internet providers don't choose our content for us, social media websites do it already through platform partisanship. Critics have accused Facebook of political censorship and Twitter of not enforcing its rules evenly. See routine Twitter rule violator. Donald Trump. But that's to the point of there is a little bit of censorship going on as far as people who are deemed troublemakers, like I guess Milo Yiannopoulos got in trouble. I mean, I don't really like a lot of stuff that he says because he's just a giant troll and he does it to get under people's skin. But at the same time, I'm kind of a free speech guy. It's like, if he says something to offend me, it's my choice to let it get under my skin. Or, should I just walk away, or should I let the government or Twitter, for example, just block him and censor him? Like, what's right? I don't know really what the right move is when it comes to people like Milo. Censorship is a whole nother argument that we don't really need to get into. But that you know, that is a thing. I don't know if it necessarily goes into net neutrality though. But what would you say to that?
If you turned in a paper that had that con written, I would get probably 25 points taken off, because the crux of the argument is basically, I killed a bunch of people, but so did Hitler, so it's cool. They were like, yo, censorship might happen if we take away net neutrality. And then the con is like, but censorship already happens from other people.
Yeah, that's a good point. Good point. Wow. See,
you and me are on the same page that we don't like censorship. So it sounds like we're with the pro on this one.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm pretty much with the pro in the way that I'm so glad that we're having this conversation with you, because you have a unique insight into it because of your electrical engineering background.
I did kill a bunch of people, so that's why.
Pro, a level playing field keeps prices down for consumers. Yes. Tim Berners-Lee, one of the founding members of the internet, stated, "The internet was created with the intention that it remain neutral and non-discriminatory. Putting regulations in the hand of network providers could allow them to create a tiered internet system. For example, if a music streaming site wanted to be in the top tier, the fast lane, it would have to pay for it, unless it wanted its users to suffer from buffering streams. To remain profitable, that company might increase its premium subscription rate or make its free service no longer free. Only people who can afford the price hike can listen to the music through that site." That's a valid point.
That's absolutely true. I do agree with that. And I'm hearing this and I'm thinking about how the electric grid developed in the United States, and how there was never, ever, no power company was ever whined about more people using appliances in their homes, which took more power, because they knew that their existence was not to make a profit for themselves, but was to rather provide power to every single person that needed it. And that's the thing that's missing here.
But you've been in these classes since, so you know the history of electricity. So my question to you, and I asked you this when we talked about this a little bit last, is when electricity was finally becoming a thing, and however long ago, 100 years ago, whatever, how did they handle this particular situation where they had to have this conversation? Well, electricity is a thing. Do we make it a profitable thing, or do we keep it a utility? So what happened during that time?
Well, it developed a little bit after the Great Depression, and everybody was into this thing called trust busting, where they blamed big corporations for the stuff that had happened in the stock market during the Great Depression. So they said we could benefit from breaking up some of these monopolies, and in that climate, they made decisions about electricity. They said, if you are the generator guy, you can't also be the transmission guy, because for this, you're owning the river and the boats.
Right.
If you're the transmission guy, you can't also be the distribution guy. And they knew they had to be so careful. They anticipated all of these problems that we're seeing now because of the way that telecoms are structured. I don't consider Comcast and AT&T evil. I think they're doing what is inevitable given the structure that we've given them. And, the founding fathers of electricity, I guess, they saw this coming, and they said, if we're going to make this a utility, it's going to be a government-sanctioned monopoly. You only have one choice on electricity, right? You have NES, that's your distributor.
Yeah.
Yeah, but it's always pretty cheap, right? You always have pretty reliable electricity, and you pay way less on electricity than you do cable bill, right?
Correct. Yes.
That was always the beginning of this search that I made, because all my life I'd heard, regulations are bad, the government interference is bad, but then I saw this market where there was so much regulation and so much strict government interference, but it was an example of regulation done correctly, and that's the electric market. And I would say, here's this other place, this wild west of competition, where there's all this free market competition, allegedly, in the telecoms, but my cable bill is way higher because they're profit focused and not consumer focused. They're not focused on what the people need.
Absolutely. Yeah. Con. We're going to con. Low data consumers have to pay as much as high data consumers. So this is to the point that you brought up earlier, that that's just it's a dumb argument. So like here they say critics of net neutrality point out that consumers burn through data in different ways, which means heavy data users pay proportionately less than low data users. Like you said, grandma checking her emails, homeboy playing, Xbox 360, or Xbox 360, Xbox One all day, 24/7 online, just leaving it on, should someone who only uses the internet to check their email pay Comcast the same home internet bill as the person who paid? Yeah, we already went through this. So
right now they have the power to fix that problem. They can charge less, but they don't.
And they don't do the tiered model. They just don't do it. The television industry is going through a golden age. There's no doubt that streaming services like Netflix, Hulu, and Amazon have changed the way we watch TV shows and kickstarted a creative renaissance in television arts. Trickling in with the golden age of television, streaming sites are also investing in original movies now, like Netflix-produced Okja. What is Okja? I don't even know what that is.
If it's based on the hit video game Okami, maybe it's worth checking out.
They probably could have used a different Netflix show. I don't know.
Is there like an ad off to the side for Okja?
It's interesting. Like better show. Con: streaming companies take advantage of infrastructure. Internet service providers are in charge of maintaining and developing broadband infrastructure. Like a highway, more users and heavier usage require more money and energy to upkeep its infrastructure. But improvements cost money, and videos, which makes up 70% of the internet traffic, are sprawling. Tech giants like Facebook that provide real-time video calls and Amazon, which provides legal streaming, use the existing infrastructure for free. The end of net neutrality could force these companies to pay up. Should Pai win the vote, and he did, the deregulation won't immediately go into effect. Democrats have vowed to overturn the proposal, and states could still legislate on the matter at the local level, and expect lawsuits from the net neutrality supporters as well, which is happening right now. There's lawsuits going on.
That's exactly what's happening. That was actually very prescient of them.
So yeah, that's pretty much it.
I like how the very last there was a lot. I feel like there was one sentence where, because I'm internally a 12-year-old, you kept being like, and the golden stream trickles down the face of America. What?
I'm a terrible speaker, so I skipped that class in high school, or college, or whatever the hell. So yeah, it's so perfect. I should have a podcast, right?
I'm having fun.
Yeah. So yeah, you bring up a lot of great points, and I'm not sorry because I find it beneficial to always be in the center and to always try to find the best arguments for situations like this, especially if it's really big. Basically cultural. I guess it's not really. Is it cultural? I guess. I mean, in the modern culture,
I think that the FCC's made it pretty clear that they don't care what we think, but a cultural shift to where like cultural and cultural perspective changes have an effect on legislation. They really do. And if you don't believe me, compare some countries' healthcare systems where they believe that healthcare is a basic human right versus here in America where we don't. We believe healthcare is a good or a luxury.
Right. Yeah. And it has problems for sure. Absolutely.
That's why I think the beginning of it is cultural. Is a bunch of young people being like, we can't do without this. And to say, oh, there's too much internet, so we're gonna make there be less internet is just, I mean, it's just riding in the street to that poor 16-year-old and his 30 terabytes.
Yeah.
Doesn't it make more sense to go, there's too much, clog, so we need to get more lanes, right? Like we need to get this figured out now because,
I feel like, what I feel? I feel like this probably should have been brought up, and I don't know if it did, because we never really talked about this when we first started using the internet with AOL and stuff. Like, why wasn't there laws put in place in the beginning? It's like, okay, internet's utility. Yeah, we can all agree on it. We don't know where this is going to go, but pretty sure that in the future this might be a thing. All right, let's put some laws in. Okay, cool.
Nobody anticipated it was really broadband, and broadband was what the telecoms brought to the table. As in, like, internet's great, yeah, but here's fast internet. Here's some fast internet. And broadband exploded so quickly, I think that like we're dealing with, you know, it's safe to say we're dealing with something that we've never dealt with before. But on the other hand, you can also look at some things that, you know, some regulations they put down in 1976, some statements that FCC chairs have made in the past where they're trying to defend a free and open internet. They took for granted that that was just a part of it. That was a part of their job, was to defend a free and open internet because that's what they wanted. And so I think as long as the FCC was where it was, we trusted the FCC to make the free and open internet a priority. And well, times have changed.
I really do feel that this is going to be a big Supreme Court case in the next couple of years.
It might. It may be decided in the courts. It may be like a lawsuit.
I think that's the only way it's going to, honestly, because, you know, it's just.
But I don't. The reason I don't have that high of hopes is because the telecoms have already been trust busted before. They were already split up into, you know, little pieces that all colluded together and gave us what we have now. I don't think that it'll change unless there are, dare I say it, regulations put in place that make it so the person that delivers internet is only delivering internet, and they don't have a corporate interest in any other part of the process.
That's absolutely right. You know, yeah, that's...
Get me to Washington, Shane.